All right.
Everyone, welcome to the Neo, East, and Jam Show. I'm calling bulls. Hope everyone's doing well during this crisis. I'm Neo. We have East.
Welcome everybody to the show.
And we have Jam.
Welcome those of you who have come to see us and company.
All right. We actually have a great show ahead. We have smoking hot topics. Talk about some things going on in the world. Hopefully not COVID and political, but we'll see.
Hopefully.
We have an interview with Dr. Maria Lopez Ocasio. And we have a new segment. Not trying to start anything, but should be fun. All right. So, just to give you a little background on our show. We were three friends from high school, somewhat differing opinions, somewhat. We talk all kind of topics, pop culture, politics, health, social topics, and we call bull snaps
Schneider.
when there's something egregious. But, contrary to the name of the show, there's no profanity allowed. So, to keep it as that, we have some rules. Jan, you want to go over those rules?
I do, sir. I do. We have several rules. Most of them have to do with not cussing. If a cuss word is used once or twice, a $10 fine is given to the person who violates the trust of the other two. Now, if a third violation, same show, occurs, then a love letter is written. We call that love letter a Kellyanne. And that Kellyanne is posted on Facebook. And it's written by the two people who were mentally aggressed. And so that Facebook posting must stay up for a day, and that must express the love and joy that Big Orange brings to your heart. I'm done.
All right. All right, great. So, Jam, do we have any shout-outs?
We have any shout-outs. We got a bunch of shout-outs. We got shout-out to Reuven, Troy, Jackie, and cousin Sharon. Thank you guys for your questions. Ty, thank you for your questions. Anybody you guys want to add?
I think you covered everybody. Good stuff.
Yeah, I think you get everybody.
All right.
Cool. Well, let's get it moving.
All right, great.
So,
right. Let's start our next topic. We got hot topics.
all right. These are not just hot topics, but they're smoking hot topics. So put your big boy or girl pants on. Sabru. So, first thing first, our dear president decided that he wanted to get some things done, and he couldn't do that without Congress being in session. So he threatened this week to adjourn Congress just for a little bit while he pushed through some of his nominees. Your thoughts, Neo?
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know if you remember when Obama was in office, we were looking at Gorsuch, and there was a time when Congress was out of session, and he had an opportunity to get Gorsuch in without going through the approvals of Congress, but he didn't. So, now of course we have a different judge on the court because of all of that, and
A hero.
yeah, very, very similar situation. But in this case, Trump is trying to make that situation happen. That, of course, Obama didn't take advantage of.
So it sounds like Obama could. Sorry, go ahead. Ethan.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I know. Neil meant to say Merrick Garland.
Oh, thank you.
Democrats, as usual, are just too nice about it. I hate to be revisionist about it. I wish that Obama would have just kind of been like the president before him and cowboy up and say, "Hey, look, this is how it's going to be," and jam Merrick Garland down their throat. But having said that, Trump, he's trying to pull a fast one as usual. It's not going to work.
Look, he signed what you just said, East. He signed on that. Look at that golden signature. It's gonna come with your check. So, I'm not sure if you guys heard, but there are quite a few small businesses getting shut out of the Paycheck Protection Program that was set up to protect those same small businesses. They ran out of money. You guys got any thoughts on that? East, you first.
I just think this whole loan program is a setup for Republicans, especially those close to Trump, to steal and grift from the government. It's unfortunate that the small businesses that work hard and put their heart and soul into these businesses, they don't always have the capital to withstand these kind of depressions in the economy. They're shafted, and it's going to take a lot of hard work for some of them to come back, and some of them might not even come back. Very unfortunate.
Yeah, of course. So my wife owns a fitness studio, and small business, and she applied for those loans, and she got locked out. So it's small businesses is already struggling. We had to shut down, and it's not a good thing, especially when you have all those companies like Potbelly, and I forget the other one that created a small business entity and then applied for I think it was 20 or 30 million dollars of the money. So it's pretty unfair.
Yeah, it is. One or two more for you guys. This one touches on one of our "thou shalt not say these words" Land O'Lakes dropped the controversial Native American logo from their butter products. The Native American, we'll just leave it at that. So the princess was known as Mia, and has been a fixture on their products for years and years, close to 100. How do you guys feel about that? I know how I feel about it. East, why don't you start off with this one?
Yeah, I'm surprised that it's first of all, I'm surprised there wasn't the outrage like there has been with some of the sports teams, such as the Washington Football Club and the Cleveland Indians.
Which football club are you referring to?
The Washington Professional Football Team.
Oh, there's like two of those. The XFL. Which one are you referring to?
From the
XFL is
NFL.
not professional. XFL is not professional.
They actually are, but we're talking about the NFL club.
They are not. Paid. They're not paid like professionals.
What's the name of their team?
The Washington Red Team.
The Skins?
I think they're called
Skins, yes, the Skins. That's right, we can call them the Skins, yes.
The Aunt Jemimas? The Aunt Jemimas? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, the Skins, I mean, they've been, that is a racist name. And we don't have time to get into it. We'll probably get into that later, but I'm surprised that it's taken, oh gosh, that figure's been on the cover of the product for over 100 years, and they just removed it. It's amazing that there hasn't been an uproar besides that. Maybe there was and I missed it, but I don't know how Land O'Lakes got over on us. Neil?
What you got, Neil?
So here's my take. I mean, I love the Skins, and I love the logo. But some of these images, they show reverence. I mean, I think in some way we're getting rid of references to the fact that Native Americans even existed. I mean, they've already been obliterated from, our population, and now we're not even able to make reference to them, even if it's. I mean, I get putting their face on butter isn't necessarily.
Isn't the reverence they were looking for?
The reverence we're looking for. But some of these images are pretty nice. I mean, it's a nice image, but we're kind of like losing. It'd be different if it were a caricature of some sort, and maybe it is.
I mean, I'm with Neo a bit on this one. Land O'Lakes has sort of crossed my path and hasn't come up as a thing for me. It's not as doesn't strike me as inappropriate as the name of the Washington football team.
Fair enough. I mean, the football team was historically used as a racial slur, so certainly understandable. Although we do know that the meaning of words change over time.
Yeah, like the N-word. That's not doesn't mean the same thing.
It didn't change over time.
Exactly. It did. Oh, it didn't. Oh, I thought it over time had changed. Maybe not for everybody. Just wanted to give a real quick shout out before we move forward. The WNBA draft did honor Gianna Bryant and some of her teammates from the fatal helicopter crash. They were selected as honorees. Do you guys have any comments on that real quick? As honorary draft picks. Any comments?
I mean, it's of course, I think it goes without saying, it's a lovely gesture. Anything that kind of helps Vanessa Bryant and her family, and actually the families of all the victims, anything to help them through the grieving process is wonderful. So my hat's off to the WNBA for recognizing those who perished in the crash, and hopefully that will provide their families a certain level of grief, relief towards their grief.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was really sad. I mean, I was sad about Kobe, but it really bothered me the fact that the daughter passed in that. So the fact that we're not just honoring Kobe, but we're honoring his daughter and her teammates specifically as honorary draft picks. I'm happy with that. I like that a lot. So. All right, Jam.
All right.
Got any shout-outs?
Thank you. Yes, we got a few. I'd like to shout out Jimmy. Thanks for showing up, trying it out. I'd like to shout out Ty. Way to show up, lady. Hey, Ruth. Good to see you guys. Welcome out here. the Black Kalamazoo student get together. Welcome. So, all right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you a little later. Enjoy the show.
Cool. All right. So we'll move on. Move on to our big topic here. We have a wonderful interview with Dr. Maria Lopez Ocasio, and she's going to answer a few questions about coronavirus. So let's go ahead and bring in Dr. Maria Lopez Ocasio. So, how are you, Maria?
Welcome back.
Oh, hold on. Let me get her. He said, welcome back.
We voted for you.
So, again, thank you for joining us. I've got your audio now. Sorry about that.
Thank you for having me. I want to say very briefly that, whatever I say in your show, I'm not representing anyone, no the government or any affiliations. This is just my comments on all the data I've been reading over the days as the situation is being developing, which is very quickly. So what I read in my hands is I'm just giving you my interpretation of it, okay?
Wonderful. Yeah, we thank you for letting us know. So, all right. So, as we all know, coronavirus has had a huge impact on our lives and our communities. People are dying by the thousands. We've all been closed up in our homes. We're social distancing for weeks now in an effort to flatten the curve. I think we're all getting a little stir crazy as well. But now we're seeing protests. Our leaders are now talking about reopening the country. There's a lot of questions still revolving about coronavirus. So I kind of just want to jump into it. Well, first let me ask you, how are your family and friends? How are you holding up during this crisis?
So we're doing well. My family in Puerto Rico are under, more strict regulations and, quarantine than we have here in the U.S. They have curfew at 7 p.m. Wow. So everyone has to be home, and they have something that we call in Spanish pico en placa, which means if your license plate ends with an odd number, you can only go out certain days versus per numbers can go out different days. So even stricter than here, because here you can go outside and you'll see people still jogging or walking their dogs and things like that. So we're pretty flexible here in the U.S. in that regard. So, but everyone is holding up. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. All right, so let me just introduce Maria a little bit. So she's a biomedical research scientist. She has a background in immunology and infectious disease. She received her PhD in molecular biology from SUNY Downstate Medical Center College of Medicine. She did her postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease at NIH. She worked as a virology instructor in George Mason. And for the last 14 years, she has worked in immunology research, including 12 publications on her research. Let me tell you, Google her. She's done some very interesting work. So did I miss anything in your illustrious career?
No.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's jump right into the questions. What I'll do is I start with a question, and then we'll get East and Jam to get a couple of questions, and then we'll just jump in from the audience. All right. So, as you know, there's been a ton of reports about patients who have gotten coronavirus, recovered, tested negative, and then received some type of a positive coronavirus test. Can you tell us more about any information you have on that?
Yeah, so I actually been not only reading a lot of this, because there are two sides of the story, right? You're listening and reading what news outlets are telling you versus what the scientific data is actually showing you. And first of all, I have to say that once you have immunity against a pathogen, whether it's like being infected naturally and making memory antibodies that will protect you for a long period of time or years, versus getting vaccinated, it does not mean that you're not going to get infected with the pathogen. What it means is that you're not going to develop the disease. So there are two different. This is something I actually stress out a lot to my pre-medical students, because it's it's a concept that it's out there, but it's not explained thoroughly, and I think it's important to make it out clear. You know, you can get infected, but
so
you
you're saying,
develop it.
so you're saying immunity does not mean that you can't get sick again?
No, immunity doesn't mean that you cannot catch a pathogen or a germ.
Okay.
You just want, if I understand you correctly, I wouldn't show signs of sickness, but I'd still be a carrier, so I could still give it as a gift for Christmas to anybody who wanted it.
There's a possibility, but it's always going to depend on the titer load in your blood of the pathogen, whether it's higher or whether it's low. Because, for example, I'm going to give you a brief example of, for example, HIV patients that are taking antiretroviral drugs. The idea is to control the titer of the virus in the blood so it's not transmissible. It's almost to undetectable levels. But the virus is still, you know, just controlling it from getting, you know, from replicating it.
Okay, now we did receive an online question related to this earlier from Troy. He asked, are these patients that are having a positive reading showing symptoms getting ill again, or are they asymptomatic?
So there's a few things of what I read. First of all, this is on a small percentage of the patients that have recovered from COVID-19. This is not like a large population of the patients. And I've been discussing this with a lot of my immunologist colleagues around the world, and they think there's a possibility that the test that was done to the patients that recover gave them false negative reports, which is actually, there's always a possibility. And you also see in the news that there are a lot of tests that were not working in the beginning. There's some tests that require retesting. They test you 24 hours, and then they have to retest you another 24 hours later, just to confirm that, you know, this is a real positive test. And
so we're thinking, we're thinking they were still sick.
So there's a possibility also that it's not that they're sick, it's just that their body is taking longer to get rid of the virus, you know, itself. And this is going to depend, you know, from patient to patient, person to person. You know, as the situation evolves and we gather more data, based especially in age groups, because there's huge differences in the immune system from younger to middle age to elder people. So as we gather more and more data, we will have a better scope of what the situation is. But I send you some slides, and I believe it's slide number 8.
All right, let's go to slide number 8. Let's take a look.
So slide number 8 is showing you a 47-year-old patient that traveled from Wuhan to Australia. And you can see here that, you know, through the course of infection on letter D here, you can see these cells that are, you know, becoming activated. You can clearly see these are called T follicular helper cells, and these cells are required in order to mount, you know, a humoral immune response. And when I say humoral, it means that you're going to be making to day 20. You can see how those germinal center B cells, which are the ones that are going to differentiate into plasma cells, which eventually will make those antibodies are detected in this patient. And you can see those follicular T cells are also being detected in the patient. Importantly, also they're showing in the bottom on the right, these are histograms. They're showing, you know, that this some of these cells are also being positive for granzymes and perforin. So there are two types of immunity. You have cellular immunity, and you also have humoral immunity. So humoral immunity, if we go quickly to slide number 5. So basically, humoral immunity means that you became infected with a pathogen X or Y, in this case is SARS-CoV-2, then an antigen-presenting cell is going to recognize that pathogen. It's going to take a piece of this pathogen, called an antigen, and present it to a T cell. This T cell is going to become activated, it's going to differentiate, and it's going to go and present this antigen to the B cell. The B cell then becomes activated, differentiate into a memory B cell, and those are the cells that you are going to want to make in order to be protected for a longer run, let's say years. And then you have a plasma cell that's going to make antibodies right away in order to eliminate. See cellular immunity. So now this is an infected cell that is presenting an antigen to CTL cells. So CTL cells are cytotoxic cells, or CD8, that are antiviral cells that are in charge of eliminating cells that are infected. And you can see on the bottom that that cell is secreting these granules called perforin that make a pore that perfores the membrane of the infected cell, and enzymes that go in and then eventually kill off the cell. And you want to kill the cell because eventually the cell will burst and it will release all these viral particles into your bloodstream, and it will keep replicating.
Okay. All right. So East, did you have a question for Dr. Lopez?
I did, and once again, Doctor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I would like to know if you could just please explain why it takes some up to 14 days, in some cases, for people to develop the symptoms of COVID-19.
So this is actually not unusual. It depends on the pathogen. In this case, SARS-CoV-2 has a longer incubation period, whereas SARS-CoV, which is the outbreak that happened in 2002 and 2003, again coming from China, it was a more shorter incubation period. So it's going to vary, from virus to virus, and also from person to person as well.
Okay. Jam?
Okay.
Yes. Thank you again, doctor, for taking time from your bleeding patients. Appreciate it. The leeches are working, I promise you. We had a question from Dina. She wanted to know what are the blood tests that many of the foreign countries are using, and how does it show that you have coronavirus? And if they were that easy, why aren't we using them? Let me know if I need to repeat any of that.
Okay, so I don't know what she's asking by blood tests. So in order to determine whether or not you are sick and you're positive for the virus, what you're doing is what we call a QRT-PCR test, which is basically looking for viral antigen, viral presence in your blood. In this case, it will not be the blood. What they do is a nasopharyngeal swab, because something I didn't explain thoroughly when it's asked me, it's like, why does it take a long time for the virus to incubate? It's like, you have to think this virus is airborne. It will get to your nose basically, and it will start replicating in the epithelial cells in your upper respiratory system, which is upper respiratory. We're talking nose to trachea basically, and it will replicate there, and from there it will start migrating down to your lungs, which is your lower respiratory system. And then what happens is that you want to, something that is as close presence of the virus, so therefore you're going to go to sputum or nasopharyngeal swab, and then you're going to amplify for the genetic material of the virus, which in this case is RNA. Now, what we're trying to do in order to, propose reopening of the countries, and I believe Germany already starting to do it, is to look for presence of antibodies of SARS-CoV-2 in the people. And why are we doing this? And now we know that 25 to 50% of the people could be asymptomatic, which means that you can be a carrier of the virus, but you're not presenting any clinical symptoms. And this is why this virus is so problematic, and this is why it's now pretty much in over 190 countries all over the world. It's because we didn't know that the virus is out there and spreading until you get one sick person that goes to the hospital. Okay?
Okay. That actually speaks to one of my questions. So, considering that Washington State and California were basically ground zero, why was New York and New Jersey hit so much harder?
Okay, so, I've been asked this question before during a class, and they asked me, what do I think whether a biological agent or a chemical agent is more catastrophic, and it's biological, hands down. Because chemical you can contain, but biological, if it's in the air, you cannot contain. New York and New Jersey has mass public transportation. You can go from point A to point B in 10 minutes. And if you've been to New York, you know that those trains are packed jam.
Yes.
That's a problem. And also you have people traveling in and out, from trains and also from planes into New York City, because this is the capital basically of the world.
Right.
And in Washington State, it was more of an isolated case. You have people that were visiting China, they came back here, they tested positive, and then eventually started spreading throughout the communities. And in LA, you have a lot of traveling from Asian countries into California. But in the case of New York, they know now that the transmission actually came from Europe, basically.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right. I'll have one more question, and then we'll go to the audience again. This is actually an audience question from earlier. So Mayra asks, recent reports suggest that the virus may have started in a lab and not by mutation in bats and pangolins from a Wuhan market. Do you have any information or any thoughts on that?
Yes. So you can go to slide number 3. Whether SARS-CoV-2 was lab created or nature derived. Basically, I wish manipulating things in the lab will be that easier, because if it would be as easy as people think, we will get a lot of more accomplishments than we usually have. So on this slide, you can see A is a phylogenetic tree of different SARS-like coronaviruses with complete genome sequences. And here you can see all the SARS-CoV-2, and you can see all the SARS-CoV-1, which is the one from 2002 and 2003. You can see different species. You can see human is in red, bat is in blue, purple, and pangolin is yellow, and civet, which is a mammal, is in green. And you can see, how this they're very close related. And these are actually SARS-CoV-2. Every dot is actually isolated from a different region, whether it's Wuhan, whether it's USA, whether it's Japan or Sweden. And you can see that, it has a connection through the pangolin, and then pangolin is actually connected to the bat, which is here in purple, and then to all the reds that were isolated from people that tested positive for SARS-CoV-2. Then on B, you can actually have a diagram of the genome of SARS-CoV, MERS-CoV, and SARS-CoV-2. So that's a viral particle on the bottom. And then you can see that on your left, that's actually pretty conserved among all the 3 viruses. But then you can see, how it's pretty much similar in terms of genomic sequences between SARS-CoV on top and then SARS-CoV-2 on the bottom.
So that means we do think it was from bats or pangolins?
Yeah, there's strong evidence that suggests that it originated in bats, and from bats it actually jumped into pangolins.
Okay.
And then eventually mutated, it jumped into humans, and it mutated in a way that eventually it kept, moving into human to human transmission.
So unlikely it came from that Wuhan research center.
Yeah, unlikely.
Okay. Jan? Any audience questions?
My first concern is from myself. A sea bat sounds a little extra dangerous. Don't mention it again. Thank you, doctor. Second,
A sea bat.
Second, more importantly, we have another question from Jackie, and this is how do we decrease the waiting times for test results, and how can we make it easier to obtain testing when getting referral from a doctor is not as easy as we would expect it to be?
So that's a good question. So that actually is going to vary state to state. Why we don't have as access as we would want. They're pretty much focusing on people that present real symptoms versus people that are just concerned of whether or not I'm sick. There are limitations in some of the tests. There are companies like Quest and LabCorp that have a huge backlog of tests that are still waiting to be processed. and it depends on how many people you have processing these samples, the easiness of performing the sample, whether it's 1 hour, whether it's 5 hours, so there's a huge, waiting around this sample. So that's why some states and some counties are relying not only one source, not one type of test, but 5 or 6
Multiple
different
tests.
because they cannot wait until because if they run one out of one kit, then what do I do? Do I wait until I receive more kits, or do I go into the next type of test?
So I have a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
So early on, the WHO, the World Health Organization, offered the tests that they were using, and the U.S. declined them. Do you know of a valid reason to have declined using those tests?
So I'm not sure which test did they actually refer to. I know, as I was doing my research, they were citing one from the Institut Pasteur in France, in Paris, and it seemed to me like a pretty straightforward test. I'm not clear what's the reason, why they will not accept that one and then use another one.
Right. Okay. East, did you have a question?
Yeah, if I could just to continue to follow up on the testing. So, Doctor, if I heard you correctly, you said there's a number of tests that can test for COVID-19 or to verify.
Yeah.
What tests are, I guess, most reliable, and why? Or do, as you stated earlier, they have to be given in combinations to continue to verify the presence or non-presence of the virus. If you could just kind of explain that.
So I believe they will be using any test that's been validated by the FDA, because again, this will be a diagnostic test, so it has to be validated by the FDA. So the differences among one versus the other is that they will be amplifying different regions of the virus. It could be amplifying the envelope protein versus, the nucleocapsid protein, or they can be amplifying the open reading frame, which if you go back to one of the first figures I show you was slide number 3, you're going to see what I'm talking about. You don't have to show it, Neil, it's fine.
Okay.
It's just for, for the audience. So if you look at on the right, every test will be amplifying different regions of the virus, which is fine. You just want a test that it's reliable and it's consistent, one after another.
So, and I'm sorry. So, does the multitude of different tests, from your research, is that possibly a reason why there's a lack of testing, because maybe the medical community hasn't decided which one is most reliable?
Are you asking about standardization? Is that what you're asking?
It could be that, but
yes.
During this period of emergency, the FDA will approve, the turnover time will be a lot faster, because I don't think that's a problem. I think the main problem is how many sources you are relying into in order to, buy a test. And also, it's not only the U.S., it's the entire world, relying on all these tests. So I guess, everyone is ordering them and depending on them as well. Mm-hmm. So that is also, a big problem.
All right, Jim.
I have a question to sort of jump on that bandwagon as well. Do all the tests have the same sensitivity?
They are all very sensitive, but again, they will be looking at a different, part of the virus itself. But yes, RT, qPCR are extremely sensitive.
Okay. All right. So Carrie, she asks, reports are that the COVID-19 strain has already mutated. Do you have any information on that? And one of the big questions is, should we be worried about a second pandemic or a worse mutation?
So, mutation in viruses, especially RNA viruses such as SARS-CoV-2, are pretty normal. Viruses mutate. In this case, mutation, I don't believe it's happening as fast as other viruses will mutate. There is some data that I believe I saw early January that suggests that the strain that was circulating in Wuhan, it was more of an ancestor strain, and then from there it mutated into what they call the L strain. So S strain was more predominant, but if they were looking outside of Wuhan, especially the Hubei province, they saw that outside of Wuhan into other parts of China and into overseas, the L strain was actually more prominent. So mutation environment is pretty normal.
So which strain is in the U.S.?
I believe it's the L strain. Yeah,
L
and
strain.
I can send you later. I didn't send it because, it was a lot of data.
Yeah, of course. No, yeah. All right, Jan, do you have another question from the audience?
Oh, I've got questions.
Go ahead.
So, thank you for the last question, Ty. Tino asks, how long does it take to develop a vaccine? And before you start answering, we also want to know the difference between the types of masks. Like, what does an N95 mask do versus like a surgical or a cloth mask? And so, take it away. Good doc.
So N95, are designed to protect you 95%. Why? Because the seal around your nose and your mouth is actually pretty tight. And it's a respirator basically, versus a surgical mask. It has layers, but it doesn't protect you very well from your nose and from your chin. So there's air that could still coming in through to actually not protect you 100% from small droplets if there are around caused by aerosols. Versus the cloth mask, which is, like we say, cloth, it's not going to protect you, like a surgical mask or an N95. It's going to give you some level of protection, but I would say it's less than 20%.
So that question was from Gabby. Now, does that mean that we have no protection from a cloth mask? I mean, it is better to at least use something, right?
Yes, it's better something than nothing.
Okay, all right. So this was another question from the audience. So Mira says, when we open back up and lift the stay-at-home orders, of course we'll need to still do social distancing, but what are the dangers that still exist? And can this extreme spread happen again? Are gloves, masks, really enough to protect people, considering shortage on hand sanitizer and disinfectants and things like that?
So the hand washing will always be very protective, but to answer her question, we can go to slide number 4. And this is a term that I have not seen in the news being explained, and I think is extremely important. It's called herd immunity. So basically, if you look at the group of people in blue, these are people that are not immunized but still healthy. And then you have on yellow, immunized and healthy, versus red are people that are not immunized and are sick and contagious. So for example, you have 2 people in the bunch of group because no one was immunized. Now if you look to the right, you can see everyone is sick. If you go into the middle panel, now we have some people in yellow that are either immunized because they got sick and they have protection, natural protection to antibodies, or they were vaccinated, and they're hanging around people that are not immunized. Now you can see that still we have people that become sick, not as much as in the first panel, but I would say about 75% of the people. But on the bottom, when you have a higher amount of people being immunized, you can see that when they hang around people that are either unimmunized or sick, these even people that are not immunized can even be protected. Why? Because now you don't have as many people that are not being protected by vaccination or by sickness. So you have about 70% of the people get sick. You can protect the other 30%, and that's what basically we're aiming for here. We want people to be protected, either through vaccine, which is ideal, and if you cannot protect them through vaccine, because to answer Jam's question, which I didn't answer earlier, it's going to take a while to develop a vaccine. Making vaccines, it's not about making it, it's about making sure it's safe for the population. And that's the main concern. Yeah. We don't want to release something that is going to cause a problem. We want to release something out that we make sure it's efficacy, and it's working and it's safe.
If I want to understand, they've already developed vaccines and they're just in the testing process now. Is that right?
It is a possibility. I'm not sure what type of vaccine, whether it's DNA or RNA vaccine.
Okay. What's the difference?
But it's possible.
What's the difference
It's
between DNA and RNA?
So in this case will be, it's DNA if it's a DNA virus, RNA if it's an RNA, but RNA virus in this case is RNA. So I haven't read anything yet, so I cannot tell you for sure. It might be, but it's going to be a while until you actually test it out into the population.
Okay. Well, I have a question related to what you were talking about, herd immunity. So I've been seeing online people suggesting, let the protesters protest, let the revelers have their beach parties. If they want to risk exposure to the virus, let them do it. As long as I stay home and I do what's necessary to protect myself, that I won't be impacted. That still doesn't feel safe. If we're having those big groups going out there and passing the virus, yes, they may eventually work themselves out. But is that safe? Are we safe if we just stay home, wash our hands, and things like that?
I think we're safer if we, keep maintaining social distancing, because of the reason of this virus, being asymptomatic in 25 to 50% of the people. Yes, you might be healthy, you might be feeling fine, but that's not the problem. The problem is that, now you're being a vector, a carrier of the virus, and you can pass it on to your relatives, your coworkers, to your friends, and they might end up getting real sick. So until we don't do massive testing like South Korea is doing, and we don't start, doing the antibody test to make sure who's being exposed and who's not being exposed yet, I don't think, it's safe to start letting people out just like that.
Okay.
And that's
Jim, you have a question for the audience?
Yes, I do have a question from the audience. The first question is, I'll ask the easy one first, Doctor. How much plasma would it take from a recovered patient to be used to help someone who is affected by the virus? And then I have an add-on after that.
So this is something that we're being testing for people that recover from COVID-19. It's like to take plasma from these patients and only test it on people, try it on people that are really sick. You're not going to ask for someone to donate plasma for someone who is mildly sick. It's only for people that are really convalescent or they're probably in the intensive care unit. So basically, plasma will contain the antibody, so it has to be purified. And this is what, it's called in science, passive immunity. You're protecting, someone else that is sick with your antibodies that you created against that, pathogen. It's actually pretty effective, and is actually as a therapy is being used to other type of viral infections.
Cool. That's from Tino. A second question is a more holistic question, and I'm going to sort of glom two together. What are your thoughts on holistic treatments, such as 1,000 cc's of vitamin C every 30 minutes, or garlic to keep away the vampire sea bats?
But
what are your thoughts on more holistic treatments?
It doesn't matter how much vitamin C you take, your body is going to excrete majority of it. So I still believe that, if what people are trying to do with holistic treatments is to increase their immune system, it's my belief that there's no such thing as, making your immune system stronger with, adding or putting something in your body. The best way you can, have a stronger immune system is by resting, by drinking plenty of water, and by eating healthy.
Okay. We're running low on time. Okay.
Okay. Well, let me tag one more on. Okay. So, Sherry asks, so are there people who have a natural immunity to this? Or, are there mutants who exist?
So I actually got that question here, but it's the other way. Are people that are more sensitive or at risk than others? And the answer is there's a strong possibility based on data from previous or other viruses. So there's something called HLA, which is a major histocompatibility complex antigen loci, and this is the molecule that will take the antigen of the pathogen and present it, into the immune cell in order to start humoral or cellular immunity. And there's some mutations that being reported, by others in some of the cells that could actually make people, more susceptible to certain infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, leprosy, HIV, hepatitis B, and influenza. Now, if there is any natural protection to it because you carry a mutation, I haven't read anything yet, but in terms of other viruses, there are people from Eastern Europe that actually have mutation in CCR5 gene, and this actually grant them, protection against HIV because CCR5 is a co-receptor required for the virus to enter the cells, and because of this mutation, these people were kind of protected. And recently, as of last year, there was this Chinese group that using CRISPR-Cas9 therapy, they were able to have design or engineer babies where they actually have mutation in this gene as well. So the babies are normal, but they have a mutation in this gene, so they're therefore protected for HIV infection.
Yeah. And East, did you have a final question from you?
Yeah. I'm not sure if the doctor may have answered it already, but right now, I believe that the experts are saying that the virus is just hitting the southern hemisphere and is starting to kind of ramp up in the southern hemisphere, South America, countries down there. Is the virus going to behave differently in certain major metropolitan areas in South America, such as Rio de Janeiro, where it's widely known that the municipal water system was already negatively compromised even prior to the virus? It is basically bad hygiene going to exacerbate the effects of the virus, and how would that potentially affect us in the northern hemisphere?
Also, on top of that, just to add to it, so Alicia asked, since it's related, could we expect this to be seasonal like the flu? Because he was talking about southern hemispheres and weather can affect certain viruses and illnesses. Could this possibly be seasonal like the flu as well?
Yeah, so to answer his question first, yeah, there's a possibility that, the lack of water could actually cause, the spread to, be more prolonged or prominent. Because, we're hearing here since January that you have to wash your hands, with water and soap for at least 20 seconds, which are CDC recommendations, So this is going to be a problem. And to answer your question, Antonio, yes, the experts are suggesting that or thinking that it is possible that this is just the first wave and there might be a second wave, or it could become even, seasonal, just like the flu.
Okay. So I've got two final questions and then we'll close this down. Unless, Jen, you got a really, really good one from the audience.
All of mine are really good, sir.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of good questions out there.
Just one real quick one I want to get in from D. What's the realistic plan, do you think, for getting the country open? Like, what type of screening, what type of testing do we need to see? And from Rebecca, I'll tag it on here. What environmentally can we change to make that more effective or has made it less effective?
Okay, I didn't understand the last question in terms of environmentally being.
Is there anything we can do with our environment alone to affect? And you just addressed part of this in the question to the East asked, but anything we can do with our environment to positively or negatively affect how we cope with the virus?
Yeah, so one of the biggest problems of this pandemic, and we saw it 10 years ago with MERS, and then 10 years earlier than that with SARS. We are cohabitating with a lot of animals. We live in a very global world where we are actually not respecting a lot of barriers between humans and animals. Not every country has the best hygienic practices, and this is a problem. And then what was your first question? Sorry, Jan.
The first question had to do with the opening of the country. What type of screening would be involved?
Yeah, so some institutions have already started, doing the antibody test to see who's being exposed or not. When you're looking at antibody tests, there are two antibodies you'll be looking at. IgM will be telling you that you have been recently exposed to the virus, versus IgG. It means that you were exposed to the virus and you already have, protection to it. So that's what you're looking at. And then, ramping up the testing to see whether or not, you're sick. So you can start, slowly, opening up the countries. But it's going to take a lot of effort from not only the states, but from also the federal government.
Okay. So, with this question, I don't want to get too political. I don't want you to get too political. Just the science of it, okay? But our first case of COVID was January 20th, right? And U.S. intelligence had warned about it weeks before that. Then the president closed off travel from China February 2nd. As late as February 28th, the president was saying this will disappear, it was a hoax, and telling people not to take it seriously. It wasn't until March 13th that the president declared a national emergency, almost 8 weeks later, 2 months, and then did the social distancing guidelines 3 days later. So here's the question, and again, don't be political, not necessary. There are major questions as to whether or not implementing even minimal social distancing measures in February instead of March would have made a difference. Do you believe there was enough information at the time to have been able to make that determination about implementing social distancing, and would it have made a difference, strictly from a scientific perspective?
So I know of this since December, because I know people that are from China. I've been reading about it even since. I've been following even earlier.
Okay.
So if you already, knew that we were bringing our Americans back from Wuhan, expatriating them back into the U.S., and then we have a case, I think we should be more, precautious here, and then start, implementing more strict rules than the ones we did later on. Okay. So we're talking about the first patient, that Washington State patient, who recovered. This is January that we're talking about, and there's even a case study paper based on him, on recovering and everything, and it was released at the end of January. So we knew about it since then.
So yeah,
So
it would have made a difference, in your opinion?
I think so. Yeah.
Jan?
Can I squeeze in? We have a few more questions. One, real quick: myth or truth? Can the virus float in the air up to 20 or 30 feet from its origin? Steve, this is for you.
Who's asking that? Sorry,
Steve. We'll call him Steve. Little Stevie. He has a harmonica. Anyway.
Go ahead. Dr. Lopez.
So I know droplets can stay in the air up to 3 hours, and as you implement the distance, the droplets become smaller and smaller and smaller, and they spread even more. That's why they said at least 6 feet of distance among each other. But there are computational assays that you can Google online, and you'll see when someone sneezes how those aerosols and droplets actually spread out through the air. Yep.
That's nasty.
It's scary.
Second question, real quick. This is a combination of Tino and Ty. We know that the virus, we're finding that the virus is affecting different parts of the body, like the liver, I think maybe the lungs and heart function. What do you know about this? And specifically speaking to the need for increased dialysis equipment for people who are having more kidney issues. So part of the question was originally we hadn't seen this out of China. Why are we seeing this now? Is it a new strain? Do you think it's just a lack of testing for that particular stuff? Was testing handled differently? And what do you think other negative effects should we expect to see from your experience?
So to answer most of your questions, so first of all, the protein or the receptor that the virus uses to enter cells is called ACE2, and it's not only expressed in pulmonary cells, but it's also expressed in other bland organs such as the liver and the kidney. And that's one of the problems. But most of the problem I can see it's due to, if you go to slide 10 real quick, is something called cytokine release syndrome, CRS. And this is, not the only virus that actually causes this. 1918 Spanish flu, actually, it's thinking that people trying to think that this is the cause of why so many young people die off. So basically, when the virus enters, it can infect any of those 3 types of cells, the macrophages, dendritic cells, and monocytes. And these cells release something called IL-6, which is the cytokine. And those type of cytokines are, inflammatory. So there will be 2 types of signaling. 6 signaling, which is on your left, to activate lymphocytic changes, which is good for your immune responses. But in some of the patients, you have activation of IL-6 trans signaling of the endothelial cells. So this leads to, increase of VEGF, vascular permeability on the blood vessels, monocytic recruitment, which accounts for a lot of inflammation, as well as neutrophil recruitment, vascular leak. So eventually, all of this starts leaking into your other bland organs, and a lot of inflammation. It is actually known to cause organ failure. Wow. So this is why you see all of this, and this happens, in less than 20% of the cases. Yeah. Wow. And there is an indication when they see on the patients, it's a clinical pattern that they are lymphopenic, which means lower cell blood count, and it's an indication of bad prognosis on these patients.
Okay. So final question. We're Monday morning quarterbacking, right? So if you could go back in time, hypothetical, after the first case in Washington State, and you had the ability to tell the president or Fauci or whomever just one thing, what would you advise them? I mean, what would have been the single most effective action they could have taken to have saved more lives? Is it like social distancing earlier, everyone wear a mask, order more ventilators, get to testing faster, shut down travel? What would you tell them?
I will tell them 2 things, because once this was out, it was inevitable, basically, that going to spread because of the asymptomatic patients. It was like ramp up like testing, and PPE, which was a big problem, and it still is in a lot of states in this country. Yep. And start implementing social distancing, especially in bigger cities, metropolitan areas.
Okay. And and one last question, sorry. Is your opinion this is actually coming from Myra, is it your opinion that we're opening too early?
I think so, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Lopez. Oh, did you have something, Jim?
Yes, one last question.
Okay.
So, if I were to put on a mask and get some COVID, could I be Wolverine? Mutations? Come on.
If you were to put a mask in...
Sorry, I'm done.
Dr. Lopez, we really, really appreciate you coming on. The information is fantastic. We'd love to have you back again, because we still have a lot of unanswered questions. There's a lot of questions that came in online, so we'd really like to have you back again.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. And the questions, you can still, if I can read them, I can answer them myself. Or you can invite me one more time, or I can find someone else, is an expert in virology or infectious diseases here show as well. I have plenty of friends.
And we could get a cage. We could get a cage match with doctors. I'm in. All
right, so everyone, if you have any more questions for Dr. Lopez, leave them in the comments below, and she'll get back to you on those. Right.
I'll try to answer to the best.
Try to answer.
To the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, doctor.
Thank you so much.
Look
We
forward
do
to
really-
Thank you, Dr. Lopez.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, guys. That was a great interview. So,
Yes.
yeah, great
Yeah.
questions from our audience. We really appreciate all the working with us and
Thank you, guys.
giving your questions out there.
I got some shout outs.
Oh.
Can I get my shout out music?
Oh, let me get your shout out music. Hold on.
Cue that up. Cue that
I'm
up.
all caught up. All right, shout
All
out
right.
music. Go ahead.
We got shout outs for Dina, Jimmy, woo! Ruben. We got you, Ty. We got you, little Stevie. Keep playing that harmonica. We got you, Tina. We got you, Karina. Sorry I missed your question. We'll have our answer for you. We got you, Sherry. We got you, Mayra. Definitely. Thanks for all the questions. We got you, Troy. Again, thank you, sir. And we also got you, Jackie, Sherry Lynn, Dee, Karen,
Rupka,
Melanda.
Maya. We had a lot of questions, so we really do appreciate all you guys.
and
Great
Gabby.
questions.
Thank you guys very much.
Great questions.
All right, so let's move on to our final segment. As you all know, we can't end the show without a little fun. You know, it was a pretty deep topic, so we got to have a little
Very
fun. So we're going to do not trying to start anything, but.
But,
All right. So
but
each you have
big
some
old-
questions for us. We have no idea what they are, but let's go for
Right.
it.
All right.
But we
real-
got the
real
right
quick.
answers.
Exactly. I'm not trying to start anything, but y'all heard Beyonce's remake of "Before I Let Go." She released it sometime last year with her Homecoming album.
Oh, yeah.
I ain't trying to start nothing, but it missed the mark for me.
What?
I was underwhelming. Frankie Beverly and Maze. That's a classic song. I give her credit for trying, but for me, nothing can top the original.
Okay,
In
well,
that
you just
case.
started something. So, no, I got Beyonce. Beyonce killed it. I mean, I love the beat. I actually thought every time I hear it, I already liked the Frankie Beverly and Maze version, but I mean, it was on point. I thought she did it.
I'm gonna have to agree with Neo's words on this one. Beyonce
Okay.
killed it. She buried it out back, and it needs to come back because the original was so much better. Oh my God, Beyonce's a murderer, and she got away with that. What were you doing? Why is she still free? Beyonce needs to go to jail. She should be in jail before Hillary. She should be.
What else you got for us, East?
Lock her up.
Whatever. I thought it was great. I thought she did fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of people that kill songs and remakes, and I don't think she killed it all. I think she did it justice. All right. What's the next
I
question?
think much like the Tiger Lady, she didn't get caught killing it, but we all think it happened.
Whatever.
Real quick, I'm not trying to start anything, but yeah, Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in the NFL.
Christian McCaffrey. Let me think about it.
Who?
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey for the Carolina Panthers.
Come on. You know who.
No,
Christian-
who?
You at least did. Oh, little guy. I see what you're going with that.
No, who? Because no. We've had great. You mean like now, like this minute?
Right now,
Where the NFL
right now.
is today?
Yeah, right now.
Saquon is the best. He was just on a sorry team. Saquon Barkley.
I have to say-
sorry.
God.
That's good. He there's a lot of. I'll be honest, there's a lot of great running backs, but
Right.
Christian McCaffrey, he had 100. He had over 100 receptions. He had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage.
So are you saying his system is good or he's good?
Right.
I'm saying he's good. I think he
car
could
has a
operate
good
in any system. I'm sorry.
I said my car
Exactly.
has a good system.
But
My car has
you're
a good-
saying he's the best.
I'm saying right now he's the best running back in the NFL.
Okay. I'm going with Saquon. Sorry.
Oh,
I have to see I have to see more from Saquon in the passing game. And to your point, Neo, yeah, he had a rookie quarterback.
A rookie quarterback, a sorry team.
But Saquon, I think athletically, Saquon is a beast. But just from production from last year, I got to give it to Christian.
I mean, if we're talking about just talent, Le'Veon was a lot of talent.
Who?
I'm not saying he is. I'm saying he was. Le'Veon
Oh,
Bell.
no, we can't even talk to you. Okay, good. Last question, East. Give me the last question.
Are you saying he was talented? What? He just.
We can't.
I didn't say his moves were smart.
Okay.
I mean, he's not a chess player.
No, we're done with him. Last question. Come on.
I'm just saying.
We're done.
Le'Veon's talented.
Okay,
he's talented. He just bad decision.
I'm not trying to start anything, but I think with the way gun sales are going in this country, might want to consider legally purchasing a firearm just in case.
Ooh.
I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not saying there's going to be a race war or chaos in the street.
Ooh.
But
That's a good one, buddy.
You might want to legally think about purchasing yourself a little protection. And I understand, once there's a firearm in the home, increase of domestic violence and suicide. I understand the consequence, the possible consequences, but also too, I would hate to bring nothing to a gunfight.
Jim, I'll let you go start with this one.
I mean, sales jumped when the coronavirus hit. I'm not sure if gun stores been called essential.
Sure.
Yes.
And they have lines.
Yeah.
So, in their lines, like, it's hard to not see that take shape and to want to be somebody who sits on the sideline. In my opinion, if you're a thinking person, because again, like, you don't want to be the guy who showed up to the Crocodile Dundee fight without proper accoutrement. Just saying.
Yeah, I'll admit, I immediately thought about that when the stuff was hitting the fan.
What was that? You broke up.
But when the stuff was hitting the fan, I was actually considering it. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to bring a gun into the house, so that was going to be tough. But I thought about it. Just because of what Jim said. So.
Yeah, I understand.
All right. Well, that was a great show, guys. Great questions. Great topics this time. We really do thank Dr. Maria Lopez Ocasio for joining us. It was a great discussion. So, really do appreciate that. And we appreciate all your interaction with us. And leave your comments in the comments field if you have any more questions. And we'll try to get Dr. Lopez back on. All right?
Yeah, and to answer any questions you guys have lingering. So.
All right. And we'd like to remind you
Thank you
guys
guys so much.
Yeah. We'd like to remind you guys, so follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, YouTube, at The NEJ Show. And our next show time is Wednesday, 8 p.m. And we'll see you then. Oh, don't forget, www.nej.show. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Good looking out, y'all.
Have a great day. Thank you.